From the IMTV Wave Channel 5 studio at Greenville Senior High School, home of the Greenville Green Wave, the Greenville Veterans Memorial Park and Digital Library proudly presents Never Stop Serving.
Greetings, everyone. Welcome back to Never Stop Serving. I am your host, Samuel Plock. This series is sponsored by Greenville High School's Interactive Media class and the Veterans Memorial Park and Digital Library. Today, we have a very special guest, Paul Butch Griffith. Welcome him to our show. Paul is the commander of VFW post number 3288 in Brookville, Ohio, which the location is there of our next talent show on November 12th. Be there or be square. Please welcome Paul Griffith.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Paul, please tell us about where you came from, your origin story, your parents.
Well, I was born on Prime Street. Well, not actually born on Prime Street, but I was born at St. Elizabeth Hospital in Dayton, Ohio. We lived on Prime Street. That's South Park. At the time, my father worked at Delco. My mother stayed home and took care of my three sisters and me and my brother. And we moved around a little bit. My oldest sister passed, and we moved up to Lakeview for a couple years, and we came back to Dayton. My father remained at Delco, and then he passed away at a young age, and my mother had to move to Dayton. And I went to school in Dayton. I graduated from Patterson Co-op and became a mechanic. I worked at White Allen Chevrolet for a few years, and I worked at Paddock Pontiac. I got drafted in 1965. I turned 22 actually the first week there.
Wow.
Right after I was drafted, first week in basic training. Went through basic training. When I got there, we took all kind of tests, and me and my buddy Bob Kramer, who has passed on since, both qualified for OCS. And
what is OCS?
Officer Candidate School. And at the time, there were three of them. There was one in Fort Benning, that was infantry. There was one at Fort Sill, artillery, and one at Fort Knox, which was armor. We chose. We got to talking, me and Bob, and we said, "Well, which one won't we have to march and walk so much?" And he said, "Well, probably artillery. They get to ride a lot." So we said, "Well, let's go to Fort Sill and go to Fort Benning OCS, or Fort Sill artillery OCS." And we did. And we got out to Fort Sill, and of course we had to go through advanced individual training first. But they sent us to 3 weeks of leadership school so we could become acting NCOs, and we did that. Went through advanced artillery classes for eight or 9 weeks, and then when we left there, we started OCS. We both graduated OCS in 1966 and became second lieutenants. I had applied for flight school, and in the meantime they sent me to a Pershing missile battalion at Fort Sill. I got my qualification thing back from Washington D.C. They had to send it all the way through there. The Surgeon General looks at it and everything, and I wasn't qualified for flight school because of my eyesight. I found out I was colorblind. I had no idea, but I remained in the Pershing missile unit and went to Officers Pershing School and learned how to fire missiles, and was able to do that. We made trips to Utah, which is White Sands Missile Range, and I pressed the buttons on a Pershing missile and sent it south down to the White Sands Range, which was at the time the largest Army missile that we had. It was totally nuclear. Of course, ours was not armed, since we were firing within the United States, and our firing was very successful. Our battery won the what they call the pickle barrel, and we were proud of that. We were the closest to the target. But I remained, right after that, I was promoted to first lieutenant, and remained in that unit for another 8 or 9 months until the latter part of 1967, early part of January of '68. I was my colonel came over to my office one day, and he was laughing at me, and he said, I said, well, what's so funny? He said, guess where you're going? I said, Vietnam. He said, nope, you're going to Korea.
Wow.
I said, I don't think so. So, unfortunately, I'd had a couple of my friends that had already been killed in Vietnam, and I didn't want to do my service without doing my part. So I called the Career Center in Pentagon, talked to a Career Center officer there, and he said, no problem, we'll have your orders changed. So I changed my orders to Vietnam. And I arrived in Vietnam just in time for the '68 Tet Offensive. I don't know if any of you know what the '68 Tet Offensive was.
Well, please tell us.
Well, it was a total all-out advance from the north of everything they had. And they sent everything and everybody and every piece of weapon that they had south toward us. They almost took over Saigon. But one of our batteries even went to Saigon and set up in what they call the Tudo racetrack, which was at the time a very famous horse racetrack that people came from around the world at one time. But we had one of our 105 batteries set up right in the middle of it. And when I got there, they gave I met the colonel. Had to go down to Saigon to meet him, and he said, "Well, I want you to go back, and you're gonna be in charge of the base camp till we get back there." So I did that, and immediately after that, he gave me another job of inclimating and bringing in the 197th National Guard from New Hampshire. And the battalion, they were a 155 millimeter howitzer battalion, artillery. And I had the task of going down to Saigon docks and getting all their equipment off the ship, bringing it up to our base camp, and then going to another air base close by, picking them up, bringing all of them to our base camp, and then training them for a short time till they got acclimated to the country. And they were part of our group. But shortly after that, I was giving a firing battery, 105. Well, we started out with the old split trail, and then we went to the newer model, the M106, which was a little bit lighter, and they called it the airborne model. But that's the one that we had until I left, and I was the battery commander until I came back in 1969, February of '69. Came home. I got home, and at the time, I don't know if you folks know about it, but at that time we were not given any uh, any kind of parties or anything, or people just didn't like us.
Yeah, it's what I heard from. I had I had an uncle on my mom's side that served in Vietnam, and he remembered that you guys were hated because you killed. They allegedly said you killed kids.
Yeah, they called us baby killers, and some of the guys even got spit on coming home.
Ugh, that's horrible. It was traumatic, and I got home. My family welcomed me home. We had dinner that night and had a real nice time, a real nice welcome. But it was hard coming right out of the field at the time. They don't do it now, as I understand. But at the time, we came right out of the field. We were being rocketed and mortared and shot at one day, and the next day we were on an aircraft coming home in a civilian jetliner. And it was very confusing and traumatic, and wasn't easy to acclimate back to what we call the real world. Yeah.
And once I got back and I got to talking to some of my friends that I had left at home, and I thought, well, I got to get back to the service. And my next duty station was at Fort Benning. Although I was an artillery officer going to an infantry unit or infantry post in Georgia. Got down there, and I had no idea what I was going to do. I reported in, and the guy said, well, I'm going to put you in the Inspector General's office. And so I went to the Inspector General's office here at the training center, and I was helped him. I was assistant to the Inspector General.
Could you tell us what branch of the service you worked for and how long did you serve?
I was in the Army, artillery. I was drafted for 2 years and then added 2 years onto that. 2 years and 1 month. I was active duty 4 years and 1 month. And when I got out, of course, I spent another 2 years in the reserve. And when I left Fort Benning after a few months, I came home and went back to civilian life.
Well, there you go. Must have been hard to readjust.
It was a tough time. I met, just to give you an example, I was sitting in a bar one night, and a local bar that I'd been in many times before I went in. It was kind of a neighborhood place, and recognized an old neighbor, and we got to talking. Matter of fact, he had grown up next door to me, and he said, where you been? I said, well, I just got out of the service. And right away, I could see his whole demeanor changed. And well, he said, me and my wife, we're totally against the war, and we're totally against anything military. And I just moved on down a couple of seats and didn't want to start a ruckus or anything.
Yeah.
So, but that's the kind of reception that we received. So. After that, I worked a few years and let my hair grow a little bit, and later on I grew a beard and went about my life.
Well, there you go. Do you have a special memory or experience in Vietnam you'd like to share with us?
That's a tough one. Trying to think of some good experiences we might have had. We used to help our doctor out. He would a lot of times he would go to the local villages and help the people there, and we'd go along with him and meet the people. that was a really good thing. Well, they even had their version of the Boy Scouts over there, and we contributed a lot to the one local one that was near our base camp. Trying to think of, I don't really, well, once in a while, our mess sergeant would go down to Saigon, to the docks, and he had some friends down there in the Navy. Well, the Navy, they liked to have some of the weapons that we had captured from the enemy. So he would take a few of them down there, and they would give him boxes of steak.
Wow.
For those rusty old weapons that had been in the tunnels and the ground for quite a while. Probably some of them weren't even serviceable. But
Yeah.
he'd get a box of steaks or whatever, and he would bring them back, and we'd have a nice cookout.
Wow. Was it difficult transitioning from a battalion commander to a private citizen?
Well, it was. One of the things that did happen, I remember when I came home, of course, we've seen a lot of the people that were surrounding the various military places with their signs and their what do you call it when you go out and you protesters against the war, and we had to go through a few of those. But I happened to be in downtown Dayton right after I got back, and I decided I'd go down and buy some civilian clothes to get back into the swing of things. And I went down to Reich's. I was crossing the street there on 2nd Street, and there was a group of them on one corner, and this little gal came running to me. She must have known I was ex-military, probably my haircut and whatnot. She ran up to me and she stuffed some literature in my hand. She said, "I want you to read this." And I just kind of gritted my teeth and went across the street and got across the street and stuffed it in the trash can and went on. I didn't pay any more attention to them, but that's the kind of reception that we got when we were back here. We came back to civilian life, even in Dayton, Ohio. So what can you expect? But that was the times.
Yeah, very difficult times.
Yes, it was.
What kind of things does Brookville VFW do for the community?
We do a lot for the community. We do a lot for the schools. We do a lot for anytime the schools have a function, we donate to them. We try to help them out. We do we're the Ohio State, where they go to the state thing every year, and we send a couple of people to that. We donate. We just donated to the Christmas thing they have every year for the senior citizens up there at the school. We at Thanksgiving we take around food certificates for the local store, grocery store, and we give out about anywhere from 20 to 30 of those.
Wow.
So they can buy food and turkeys or whatever they want.
Yeah.
We do the same thing at Christmas, and what we do, we call the school, and I call the school nurse, and she gives me a list of all the people that might need help, and they give them their name and address and the number of children they have and their ages, and we buy gifts for every one of them, and we also include a food certificate for that.
Wow.
So
well, it looks like we're still dealing with difficult times these days.
yes. One thing I would like to add, you said community. Here in the last few months, our local police department, which we have one of the finest, they were not allowed a grant. They got turned down for a grant for body cameras. And those body cameras were going to cost somewhere in the neighborhood of about $15,000 to $20,000.
Wow.
So I went ahead, got with my guys, and we voted to provide them with body cameras. So we purchased all the body cameras for the police department in Brookville.
Wow.
That's another thing we did for the community.
Well, there you go.
And we take care of any and all the veterans and their families.
That's so important these days.
Yes.
What do you see as the biggest issues for the VFW nowadays?
Right now, we're not having too many issues since we got back from this COVID deal back under swing. We were down for 2.5 months. We were totally closed. That kind of hurt us.
Yeah.
And we reopened, and we're doing better now than we ever did before. So we got no complaints right now. That's really we're doing well.
That's wonderful. Do you have any special events or information to share with our viewers?
Well, we got that talent show coming up on the 12th of November. Of course, we have every year, we have Veterans Day events. There again, we go up to the school.
Yeah.
The school puts on a thing for all the veterans. We have a coffee and donuts at 8:30. Then we go to the gymnasium and they have a special program. Right after that program, it's a really nice program. These kids go all out.
Yeah.
Just like you guys do here. And they really treat us well. And we leave there and we go up to Rob's, which is a local restaurant. And the police serve us free dinner.
Wow.
So we have a really great dinner there. It's like a smorgasbord. And when that's done, then we go to at 2 o'clock, we go out to our memorial.
Yeah.
And we have our memorial hadn't been there that long. It's at the park, right as you come into Brookville. It's beautiful. It's been there about 5 years now. And we go there and we will pay tribute to those that didn't come home.
Yeah. Sad, isn't it?
So that's coming up. Any and all are invited to that. We have things going on. I'd have to look at the calendar. We have bands coming in. We have a bingo twice a month. We have trivia, and we have a good time.
Yes, because we do need to have a good time right now and nowadays with all the trials and tribulations we've had in our country.
You got that right. You got that right.
Well, thank you once again for your awesome service to our country and for speaking with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And let me say this. I hear so often, these kids today, they're just not brought up like we were. Well, I got news for you. You guys are better than we were, and you're smarter. So, keep it up.
And I imagine they will. Here at Never Stop Serving, we highlight veterans that continue to serve beyond their military service. Please watch for new and upcoming episodes of Never Stop Serving. This is another full-packed season, so stay tuned, folks. Folks, our Clue 8 talent show on November 12th at the Brookville VFW is fast approaching. We are still accepting acts and accepting sponsors. We are doing great things here with the Veterans Memorial Park and Digital Library. Please help us support us in whatever way you can. Also, continue to watch the Veterans Memorial Park and Digital Library Facebook page for all upcoming events and updates. If you are a veteran and would like to share your story, please send us an email at gvmpdl@gmail.com. That is gvmpdl@gmail.com. Thank you for watching. This is Samuel Plock, signing off.
Thank you for watching. Please visit us on our social media sites. Please consider contributing to our mission in some way. Also, we are always looking for veterans and their families to share their stories with us. Be sure to join us next week for our next episode of Never Stop Serving.